The freezing rain fell so hard that night it seemed determined to wash away every trace of hope from the city. Cars rushed past without slowing, people hurried beneath umbrellas without looking around, and on a lonely sidewalk, a young delivery mother stood clutching the last hot meal she could afford after 16 exhausting hours of work. She hadn't eaten all day. Her little son was waiting for her at home, and the tiny meal in her hands was the only thing keeping her from collapsing. Then she noticed an old homeless man sitting on a soaked bench, trembling so badly that he could barely hold himself upright. His eyes were filled with quiet pain, but he asked no one for help. In that heartbreaking moment, the hungry mother made a choice that no one expected. She handed him her only meal, smiled softly despite her own empty stomach, and walked away into the cold darkness. Less than 24 hours later, that single act of kindness would bring one of the city's cruelest bosses to his knees. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness always comes back in unexpected ways, please like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who still believes in humanity, and subscribe to Kindness Thread for more emotional stories that restore faith in people. Emily Dawson had never imagined life would become this difficult. At just 32 years old, she had already buried her husband after a tragic warehouse accident, inherited thousands of dollars in medical debt, and become the only provider for her 6-year-old son, Noah. Every morning before sunrise, she left their tiny apartment while Noah slept beside an old stuffed bear that had once belonged to his father. Emily worked as a food delivery rider for SwiftGo Delivery, one of the city's largest delivery companies. The job was dangerous, exhausting, and humiliating. Riders were expected to complete impossible numbers of deliveries every day. If traffic slowed them down or heavy rain delayed them by only a few minutes, their pay was reduced without explanation. Their regional manager, Victor Hale, treated every employee as though they were disposable. Compassion never existed inside his office. Numbers mattered. Human lives did not. Emily accepted every unfair rule because she simply couldn't afford to lose her job. Every dollar meant food for Noah, rent for another month, or medicine whenever he caught a cold. She often skipped breakfast and lunch just so her son would never have to go to bed hungry. Her co-workers admired her determination, but they also worried about how thin and exhausted she had become. Even then, Emily greeted customers with a warm smile because she refused to let hardship steal the kindness her late husband had always admired. That rainy evening became one of the hardest shifts she had ever worked. Orders kept arriving faster than she could deliver them. Her soaked clothes clung to her body as icy wind cut through every layer she wore. By the time she finished her final delivery, every restaurant had already closed except one small diner preparing to shut its doors. Emily spent nearly all the money left in her wallet on a simple container of chicken soup and bread. It wasn't much, but after an entire day without food, it felt like a feast. As she sat beneath the awning of an old bookstore, preparing to eat, she noticed an elderly man sitting several feet away. His gray beard was soaked from the rain, his worn coat offered almost no warmth, and beside him rested a torn backpack that seemed to contain everything he owned. His hands shook violently from hunger and cold, yet he stared quietly at the wet pavement instead of asking strangers for help. Emily looked down at her food, then back at the old man. Her stomach ached with hunger, but her heart hurt even more. Without allowing herself time to change her mind, she carried the meal over, gently placed it into his hands, and wished him a warm night before walking away with nothing except a bottle of water. The old man watched her disappear into the rain. Tears quietly filled his tired eyes. For months he had been ignored, mocked, and treated as though he no longer existed. Yet this struggling young mother had offered him everything she had without expecting anything in return. Before taking his first bite, he carefully memorized the company logo printed on her delivery jacket. Emily returned home after midnight. Noah was asleep on the couch with his homework still open beside him. She kissed his forehead, drank tap water to silence her hunger, and covered him with the only blanket they owned. Looking around the tiny apartment with peeling paint and leaking windows, she whispered a silent promise that somehow life would get better. She simply didn't know how. The next morning began with another humiliating staff meeting. Victor Hale shouted at exhausted delivery workers, accusing them of laziness and threatening to fire anyone whose performance dropped below impossible company targets. Emily stood quietly among dozens of frightened employees, believing this would be another day of insults and impossible expectations. Then everything changed. Several black luxury vehicles stopped outside the building. Senior executives entered alongside company board members, followed by the same elderly homeless man Emily had fed the previous night. Except now he wore an elegant tailored suit, polished shoes, and carried himself with calm confidence. Every employee stared in complete silence while Victor's face slowly turned pale. The elderly man introduced himself as Jonathan Brooks, the retired founder and majority shareholder of Swift Go Delivery. After losing his wife the previous year, Jonathan had quietly spent months living anonymously among the city's homeless population, hoping to understand how ordinary people, and especially his own company, treated those who had nothing. During that time he had witnessed delivery riders abused by management, employees denied fair wages, and supervisors rewarded for cruelty instead of leadership. The only person who had shown him genuine compassion without recognizing his name was Emily. Jonathan revealed that the previous evening had confirmed everything he needed to know. A woman struggling to feed her own child had demonstrated more humanity than executives earning millions every year. In front of the entire staff, Jonathan announced Victor Hale's immediate dismissal. Independent investigators had already gathered evidence of illegal wage deductions, unsafe working conditions, and systematic mistreatment of employees. Every worker who had unfairly lost income would receive full compensation, improved benefits, paid sick leave, and safer working policies. The room erupted into emotional applause while Victor silently packed his belongings under the watchful eyes of security. Then Jonathan turned toward Emily. He thanked her for reminding him why he had built the company decades earlier, not simply to deliver meals, but to serve people with dignity. He offered Emily a leadership position overseeing employee welfare and community outreach, believing that someone capable of sacrificing her own dinner for a stranger possessed the character every great company desperately needed. Over the following months, Emily's life transformed in ways she had never imagined. Noah finally had a comfortable bedroom instead of sleeping on a worn-out couch. They moved into a small but warm apartment where laughter slowly replaced worry. Delivery riders across the company received fair schedules, emergency support, and respect that had been missing for years. Emily never forgot where she came from, and every winter she organized food drives for struggling families and homeless shelters because she understood that kindness grows strongest when shared. Jonathan often said that billion-dollar investments had never changed his company as much as one exhausted mother carrying a single container of soup through the rain. That one selfless decision restored the heart of an entire organization and reminded everyone that true leadership begins with compassion. Before we reach the end of this story, please leave a comment with the single word, kindness, if you believe one small act of generosity can change someone's life forever. We'd love to read your thoughts. And if this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with your family and friends, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Kindness Thread. Your support helps us continue bringing inspiring stories of hope, courage, and compassion to people around the world. Sometimes the greatest miracles don't begin inside boardrooms or billion-dollar companies. Sometimes they begin with one hungry mother, one forgotten stranger, and one simple meal given with a loving heart. Kindness may seem small in the moment, but its impact can echo through countless lives for years to come.